He's not just one of the richest men alive, he's the wealthiest Jewish billionaire on the planet. But unlike others who live loud, his life is a blend of power and principle, built on silent influence, lasting legacy, and global reach. So how does he spend his billions? To understand his lifestyle, we need to understand how he built his empire. His name is David L. Rees, and his story doesn't start at a boardroom or behind a billionaire's desk. It starts in a one-bedroom apartment above a deli in Brooklyn, where the smell of a fresh challah mixed with the sound of ambition. Raised by Holocaust survivors who arrived in America with little more than iron will and old-world wisdom, David learned early that resilience wasn't just a trait, it was a tradition. His father ran a tiny electronics repair shop, fixing radios during the day and reading Torah at night. His mother taught piano to neighborhood kids, slipping coins into a tin labeled college. That tin, filled one crumbled bill at a time, would eventually buy David a one-way path to MIT. He majored in computer science and minored in philosophy, not because he wanted to, but because he believed understanding systems and souls were equally important. In the late 80s, while Silicon Valley was still sketching dreams on napkins, David launched a data security firm from a garage he didn't own. The company Neuralog became one of the earliest to predict how data would be the next battlefield, long before the term cybersecurity entered everyday speech. Within 10 years, he had sold it for $2.1 billion, but that was just the first move in a longer, deeper game. Rice didn't cash out and disappear. He reinvested into AI before the boom, into fintech before it was cool, into biotech, green energy, aerospace, blockchain infrastructure, and global real estate. While others were chasing quarterly profits, he was acquiring silence, companies with deep tech, minimal press, and monumental upside. A quiet empire built not for the spotlight, but for the future. But what truly separates him isn't just scale, it's conviction. Every deal he signs, every company he builds, runs through the lens of something older than spreadsheets, his Jewish identity. He once told a journalist, "Profit means nothing without purpose. Business is my way of keeping the promise my grandfather couldn't." His philanthropic trust bears the names of his great-grandparents, lost in the camps. Every quarter point return funds scholarships in Jewish schools, preserves forgotten synagogues in war-torn regions, and sponsors research in ethics, not just innovation. He observes Shabbat no matter where he is in the world. From Tel Aviv to Tokyo, when the sun sets Friday, his world slows. No meetings, no tech, just candles, prayer, and silence. A billionaire pausing a world he helped accelerate. David Rice made his billions not by chasing trends, but by building tomorrow with two hands and one unshakable principle. Never forget who you are, even when the world forgets who made it possible. Now that we know where his money came from, let's see where it goes. David L. Rice lives in a world sculpted by discretion and design, a lifestyle carved not from craving attention, but from curating peace. While the headlines often chase Laro billionaires, Rice moves like the second hand on a luxury watch, precise, smooth, and almost unnoticed. But when you trace his footprint, the scale becomes undeniable. He owns homes the way some people collect art, each residence an expression of place, purpose, and memory. In the hills above Los Angeles, his cliffside glass estate peers out over the Pacific like a modern fortress, sun-drenched by day, fire-lit by night. In Israel, his Jerusalem home sits quietly behind limestone walls, steps away from history, designed with sacred geometry embedded into the architecture. And in the Swiss Alps, a chalet unlike any other, part retreat, part sanctuary, sleeps under stars where Rice goes to disappear from the noise of the world he helped build. His preferred mode of travel is his custom Bombardier Global 7500, which he refers to not as a jet, but as airspace mode personal. The interior is lined with hand-stitched leather sourced from a kibbutz co-op and inlaid with subtle Hebrew calligraphy. It's not flash, it's fingerprint. When the sea calls, his 300-foot yacht named Shemesh, sun in Hebrew, awaits. It's powered by hybrid engines and features a floating synagogue, designed for Shabbat no matter which ocean he's crossing. The man has a taste for motion, but never chaos. His car collection is a symphony of elegance and rarity. A silver Aston Martin with mezuzahs embedded in the interior doors, a Tesla Roadster engraved with the Shema on the dashboard, and a single vintage Citroën restored not for style but because it was the same model his father once drove to synagogue in the Bronx. Rice's favorite cities are a balance of intensity and stillness. He summers in the hills outside Florence, where the scent of olive trees lingers longer than emails. Winters are often spent between Tel Aviv and Aspen, one for energy, one for reflection. When he's in New York, he avoids the penthouse parties. Instead, he meets rabbis for late-night tea or walks the Upper West Side before dawn, unnoticed in a black coat and cap. Surrounding him is a staff trained not in luxury but in royalty. His personal chef was once a yeshiva student. His lead security officer grew up guarding historic Jewish quarters in Europe. Everyone on his team understands they're not just protecting wealth, they're protecting something deeper. His home routines are simple: fresh-cut flowers, handwritten notes, and climate data reports. Tradition meets tomorrow every day. And yet, despite all of this, the homes, the travel, the comforts, his world never drifts into indulgence. Everything has purpose. Everything ties back to something older, something sacred. For Rice, luxury is not about escape, it's about expression. And in every brick, bolt, and polished surface, there is a story whispering where he came from. But behind all the luxury is a man deeply rooted in history and faith. For all his global reach and cutting-edge ventures, Rice's life is anchored in something far older than innovation: tradition. His billions orbit a center that never changes. His Jewish identity, woven not as a detail but as foundation. It's not branding, not performance, it's belief, lived through every habit, holiday, and heartbeat of his day. He doesn't just observe Jewish holidays, he sanctifies them. On Yom Kippur, business halts entirely. Not even his most high-stakes negotiations are allowed to touch the sacred pause. On Passover, he flies his entire family and staff, chefs, scholars, and friends to Jerusalem, where the Seder is held in a stone courtyard under open sky. The Haggadah is read in Hebrew and English, led by candlelight, with ancient melodies and questions passed between generations. Even in modernity, he treats each holiday as an unspoken thread tying him to ancestors who could only dream of such freedom. Keeping kosher for Rice isn't an inconvenience, it's a reminder. Whether he's in Tokyo or Berlin, his team sources kosher meals days in advance. His chefs work with rabbinical supervision, and his kitchens, on land, in the air, and at sea, follow the laws of kashrut down to the last grain. It's not just about food, it's about discipline, identity, and living each day in alignment with something larger than appetite. Shabbat is sacred. Every Friday before sunset, wherever he is, the world slows, his phones are turned off, laptops closed, meetings cancelled without apology. He lights candles himself, often joined by close friends, scholars, or his grandchildren. Sometimes the setting is a dining room in Manhattan. Sometimes it's the black deck of a yacht, docked under the stars. But the ritual is the same: wine, bread, prayer, peace. In a world he helped digitize, he insists on a full 24 hours without it. Not to disconnect from work, but to reconnect with soul. Rice doesn't just attend synagogue, he helps build them. From Paris to Buenos Aires, he has quietly restored historic synagogues that were crumbling, forgotten, or abandoned. He funds Torah scroll restorations, youth programs, and Jewish libraries. One of his most personal projects was the revival of a centuries-old synagogue in Lithuania, the town his grandparents fled. Today, it's filled with music, study, and life again, because he made it so. Jewish education is a passion, not a line item. Rice donates millions to yeshivas and Jewish schools, but also to secular institutions that teach Hebrew, Jewish philosophy, and ethics. He believes cultural continuity doesn't come from buildings, it comes from memory, and memory must be taught, nurtured, and protected. What makes his spiritual life remarkable isn't just the rituals, it's how he balances them with global power. He walks between worlds, one foot in the boardroom, the other in the synagogue, one hand signing investment deals, the other placing a stone on a grave in Jerusalem. He blends humility with vision, always aware that his name is temporary, but his heritage is eternal. Beyond faith and tradition, he's also reshaping the future of entire industries. David L. Rice doesn't chase markets, he builds them. While others invest in trends, he invests in investabilities. His influence isn't loud, but it is vast. A single nod from his venture capital arm can shift startup valuations overnight. And yet, despite sitting atop one of the most powerful private investment networks in the world, Rice remains oddly elusive, a phantom figure in a world of overexposed billionaires. His fingerprints are on technologies that define this decade and will shape the next. In tech, he's backed companies building quantum computing infrastructure, privacy-preserving AI models, and next-gen cybersecurity systems designed to withstand attacks not just today, but decades into the future. One of his earliest bets was on cloud-based medical data company, now used by major hospitals across 3 continents to predict disease outbreaks before they occur. His reasoning: data saves lives, but only if it's protected. In energy, he's not just buying into solar or wind. He's funding hydrogen fusion experiments in underground labs beneath the Nevada desert. Quite high-risk, long-horizon plays. Where others want quarterly returns, Rice wants breakthroughs that redefine civilization. He's poured billions into space technology, not for tourism but for survival, investing in low Earth orbit satellite networks to ensure global connectivity and data security. The companies don't carry his name, but their mission carry his fingerprints, long-term sustainability with the quiet backing of someone who doesn't need a headline. Finance is another realm where Rice plays an invisible hand. His holdings stretch across private equity firms, crypto infrastructure startups, and fintech platforms that allow microplans in developing nations using blockchain verification. These aren't just investments, they're strategic ecosystems designed to bypass outdated institutions and give emerging communities real leverage. His philanthropic investments are no less calculated. He funds research institutions working on neurodegenerative diseases, clean water filtration at the molecular level, and agricultural genetics designed to withstand extreme climates. His foundation, though unbranded, has given over $4 billion to science, quietly funding projects that governments deem too far out or too slow to monetize. To Rice, those are the exact reasons they matter. He holds seats or silent advisory roles on the boards of major universities, biotech labs, and global think tanks. His opinion is sought not for its wealth, but for its weight. When world leaders meet at quiet retreats to discuss long-term economic strategies, he's often the man seated nearly the window, listening more than he speaks. But for all his ventures, what drives him isn't dominance, it's durability. He sees business not as a game of accumulation, but as a structure for impact. His investments are laced with the same foresight his ancestors used when planting trees whose shade they'd never see. And so he funds companies that will outlast him. He mentors founders who remind him of himself, but with sharper tools. He funds technologies that world isn't ready for. Because for Rice, wealth is a responsibility to prepare the world not for what is, but for what's coming. Still, his greatest impact may not be in profits, but in people. If his investments shape the future, his philanthropy protects what's sacred: life, memory, and the power of opportunity. While the public often sees numbers, billions donated to hospitals, research centers, and universities, what they rarely see are the handwritten letters he sends to young scholars or the anonymous donations that keep a rural clinic's lights on in the middle of a war zone. Over the last 2 decades, Rice has directed more than $7 billion toward healthcare initiatives around the world. He has quietly funded children's oncology wings in Argentina, trauma recovery units in Israel, and emergency surgical programs in Ukraine. In one case, when a flood destroyed a hospital in Southeast Asia, Rice personally financed a fully mobile medical convoy outfitted with AI-assisted diagnostics and solar-powered labs. It bore no plague with his name, but it saved thousands. Education is the second pillar of his giving. Rice believes that knowledge is the great equalizer, and he invests in it like a venture capitalist looking for miracles. He created a mentorship pipeline linking Jewish students from low-income neighborhoods to top-tier universities, pairing them with leaders in medicine, law, and science. His foundation offers quiet, renewable grants not just to honor achievements, but to remove the burden of survival from brilliance trying to bloom. His giving also extends to preserving history that others might try to forget. Rice has rebuilt Holocaust memorials across Europe, not as cold monuments, but as immersive interactive experiences that teach empathy through technology. One of his projects involved digitalizing thousands of survivor testimonies using voice cloning AI, allowing future generations to ask questions and hear answers in real time from voices nearly lost to time. "We don't just remember," he once said, "we resurrect the truth, so it never fades." In a world where so many give for headlines, David Rice gives for healing. His billions are planted like seeds in classrooms, in hospitals, in memories, where they grow without spotlight, without applause, but never without impact. And at the end of the day, all of this returns to one central belief. Despite his immense wealth, his children grew up with structure, expectation, and deep-rooted values. They weren't handed trust funds. They were handed responsibilities. Family discussions didn't revolve around business, but around ethics, Torah portions, and world events through a moral lens. He mentors his children not to maintain his empire, but to understand why it exists. One works in education reform, another is building affordable housing in undeserved communities, a third runs a non-profit focused on water accessibility. None are trying to be the next David Rice. They're trying to be something greater, servants of a mission that began generations ago and still outlived them all. Jewish values guide every part of that vision. Wealth in Rice's world is never to be worshipped. It's to be used wisely, shared freely, and held with humility. And when he speaks of leadership, he speaks of listening first, giving second, and only then acting. He doesn't see riches as finish lines. He sees them as tools to teach, to uplift, to repair. Because for him, being rich was never just about money, it was about meaning. What would you do if you had billions and a legacy to protect? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that explore the people quietly shaping our world.